Hey, welcome everyone to the Group Dentistry Now show. I'm Bill Newman, and like I always say, it's always great to have you here. We appreciate you checking in, and we've got 260 or 70 of these under our belt. And I just love the conversations, especially with groups that are doctor owned and led, and just the stories are all so different. And I think some things are very relatable to people in the audience, and for docs that are out there just maybe looking to add a practice or two. There's some great lessons learned, and we've got the team from Motor City Dental Partners here. And I'll set the stage. I was in South Carolina a couple of months back, a really nice resort. Really nice. And I met their chief financial officer, Mike Towle, and he was actually on a panel discussion with me. And we had a great conversation. And I've heard of the Motor City team before, and really wanted to get them on the podcast. So I'm excited to have Mike on, and the two founders, Dr. David Havens and Dr. Aaron Havens. Aaron is the CEO and David is the chief operating officer. So thanks, guys, for being on. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I think it's going to be really, really important for our audience to pay attention to this, because you guys are doing what a lot of other groups are trying to do out there, and I think you're doing it in a unique way. And we're going to talk about why you're doing things differently, and I think it's a good path to be on. So let's kind of kick things off. Mike, since you kind of got everything set up here, let's let you start off a little bit about your background, and then how you ended up at Motor City Dental Partners.
For sure. Thanks, Bill. And yeah, thanks for having us on. We're excited. It was fun when we met, and we kind of kicked it off, and so it's excited to be here. Yeah. So Mike Towle, I'm the CFO of Motor City Dental Partners. I joined Motor City Dental Partners in 2021. Prior to that, I was with a marketing group that wanted to go to market. So I helped them kind of get them in shape to get them to market. And even prior to that, I was with a private equity firm out in Kansas City. So when I joined in 2021 with Dave and Aaron, they had this amazing idea and a few practices, and they said, "Hey, this is what we want to do and what we want to grow and how we want to get there." And their story really resonated with me as kind of that entrepreneur spirit who could create something amazing. And we've kind of followed through with what they wanted to in the beginning. And so, be able to hear the story kind of from Dave and Aaron is why I want them on here. Is they have an amazing story, and we've kind of been able to stick to what their thought was in the first place.
Excellent. Aaron, why don't we move over to you and a little bit about your background. And you and Dave are brothers. So how what's it like working with your brother?
Well, there's trying times for sure. But no, appreciate having us on here. To echo Mike's point, super excited to kind of share our story, what we're doing, and what we're building. Yes, I'm Aaron Havens. I'm CEO of Motor City Dental Partners. Historically, I'm an orthodontist. Both Dave and I are orthodontists. We still dabble in the clinic here and there, but really have taken the leadership role since 2021 of Motor City Dental Partners when we founded it. And rolled our current practices that we had at the time into Motor City Dental Partners. And it's been a wild ride of excitement and growth and challenges as we continue scaling. At the time, we had 11 to 12 practices that when the OSO boom was happening and low interest rate markets, and private equity was really hot on buying dental practices and ortho practices. We looked at a different way of building a company, a sustainable company, and scaling a sustainable company without the private equity pressures. And that was our original goal right from the beginning. And as we continued with Motor City, that's what we've achieved. Back in the day, Dave's 4 years older than I am, and I got out of ortho school. He was already, kind of clipping away at some practices, and the first Havens Orthodontics practices that we owned was in 2012, so a year before I was even out. And I followed in his footsteps, and we came out and practice, and the practices were smaller, and we didn't have the opportunity for two orthodontists to be in there. And so out of necessity, we grew our practices and scaled practices in a multi-location model. Because in 2009, when Dave came out, the Detroit area it wasn't the best times for it. The economy was having some struggles, and those larger single dock offices or double dock offices weren't around. And so our Motor City was built based on the necessity for Dave and I to grow as orthodontists originally, and as the OSO boom happened, we had like I said, we had 11, 12 practices at the time, and we looked at ways that we can not be somebody's practices or be somebody's number, but how do we grow to scale our own way and produce our own platform. So that's what we did, and it's been a great it's been a great path. Working with Dave is pretty easy because you can be very frank with somebody that's your brother, versus the alternative where you may have a little bit more challenges of trying to get across points and whatnot. But it's Mike's become like a third brother to us, as he's been with Motor City right from essentially the inception of our start of our platform, and it's been a great path for all three of us, but also the team that we have behind us, and the strong team that we've built and formed and molded over the course of years. So we've been really excited and fortunate, and great partners that have come on and believed in what we're doing, and love to share it all.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Dave. You're up.
So Dave Havens, thanks for having us. I appreciate it. Appreciate the time. I think to echo what Aaron said, I think when I came out first and started kind of acquiring practices, and I think we spent the early years of both of our careers looking at scalability, looking at systems and developing strong systems for our own practices. And I think a lot of those things have really led to some of the successes we've had at the level we're at now, because we still focus on a lot of the same things, being highly integrated, highly system based, and putting the work in. That's a lot of times the hard work is not always quick wins. And I think some of the controllability that we have on the offices as we've grown and scaled, some of those early years were some of the most important, I think, in terms of our development. And I think working with Aaron, we also learned at an early age that we have different skill sets, and we really leaned on those different skill sets of what we're both good at. And then when Mike came in and the rest of the team, as we built it out, has only accentuated it. So, it has been a fun path, and we've continued to evolve, and we're always looking forward to the future and how we can get better, and how we can, better serve our partners as we come on.
Yeah, I'm curious. This is not a question we have here, but I don't think it'll trip you up. How did you two as brothers decide who was going to become the CEO and who was going to become the COO? You talked about having different sets of talents. I mean, was it just a natural thing where you were more operationally focused, Dave, and Aaron, kind of fit that CEO role? Who wants to handle
I
that?
think Aaron's always kind of been, more visionary, more creative, that always kind of aligned with his skill set. Whereas I'm more linear, A to B. I love, working through systems and processes, and I really enjoy building out things that we can deliver to our teams. And I like the organization nature of thinking and all of it. And Aaron's always been a great creative thinker, great believer in vision and direction. And so, from an early age, instead of stepping on each other's toes, we kind of decided, hey, you're really good at this, I really like doing this. And so we kind of divided up our tasks, and it's only made it even better as we've gone on.
And as you decided to go create this, Motor City Dental platform, you realized you needed to bring in Mike as a CFO. So was that kind of an inflection point for you when you're like, all right, we don't necessarily, either one of us have that skill set? Is that kind of where Mike came in?
Well, I think there's a couple of different inflection points that we've had over our career. One, when Aaron and I could no longer handle the scalability of ortho offices, and we had to bring on, kind of our first associate partner from an orthodontic standpoint. Those were big steps as we grow on our team and realize centralization was, even on a small scale, was important. And then as we looked at Motor City in the future, and really kind of putting rocket boosters on this, realizing that we, team development and finding the right people to be on as part of our team was going to be one of the most crucial things. And I still believe it to this day. I think we've been very fortunate to find awesome people and people that believe in what we're doing and work incredibly hard to the goal to serve our practices.
And I think a point to hit on that too is, right from the start of Motor City, we built the platform before we were ready for it, before we knew that we needed it, or felt that we needed it. So we invested in the mics and the HR team and the marketing team. We invested in the platform well in advance before the scale was even there. Knowing that that's the direction that we wanted to go. We didn't want to be caught behind the eight ball of our advancement of acquiring practices. And so I think that, that inflection point of bringing people on and filling the roles that, we were going to need in the future, but maybe not have needed right at that time, really started that. And that was where with Mike, when bringing him on, from a financial side, pivoting from a typical accountant firm, and kind of going, well, why do we need an in-house financial? Why do we need? Now seeing it, I 5 years ago, it's like, oh my gosh, why didn't we do this, sooner? And but it's as you're building the platform, there's no book for it, and we were figuring out on the fly, building the plane on the fly on those early days, trying to scale and trying to build that platform to be a sustainable, integrated platform for practices in the future. And that's what we developed way back in 21. And way back when we started, just as private practice orthodontic office, but really, took rocket boosters to our growth by having that platform and those people behind us to allow us to scale without issue. And so I think that's been an important part of our growth, is trying to do the right thing and scale the right way earlier and bring those components together on an earlier basis versus waiting on it.
Yeah, and I think to add that too, I think a lot of it's about supporting the practices. And so Dave and Aaron's vision always was, if we build the platform and we tell somebody we're going to do this, we have to have the team behind us that can actually do it. And so building the platform and making sure at the end of the day you can always deliver on what you're saying is building that platform, building that support team kind of as step one before you can go out there and add a practice or tell somebody you can do something. It's always like you have to have it built, so when they come in, you're kind of hitting exactly what you told them you can do. And everything has holes in it, and you kind of, as you grow, you hit different levels. But I think it's always making sure you can be there to support their practices and you can deliver on what you kind of go out there and say.
Well, I think this is important. It actually rolls into one of the first topics we want to talk about. It's why you feel you're a different kind of DSO. You're different. Everybody says they are, right? At least that's what we hear. And I think to a point that's true. And I think it can be a challenge if you're a doctor that's looking to join a DSO. And sometimes DSOs are painted with a broad brush, and it's not good because I think most DSOs tend to operate a little bit differently. But there's definitely some negative connotations out there. Some of it's justified, but like you said, when you get painted with a broad brush, then all of a sudden, you're doing things that some of the others are doing. And I think what definitely stands out is which everybody's mentioned. Most groups that I've encountered don't build the infrastructure first. They're aggregating, or they're growing quickly, and then all of a sudden, oh, okay, geez, now we need to put in place this person, or we need to get additional capital, or so they get to a point where all of a sudden they got too big and they don't have that support and a DSO in place. So I think that stands out as being pretty unique in the industry. There's some others that have done it, but I would say it's normally the opposite. You tend to get to a point and then realize, oh, okay, we need to plug in certain people. We need to, maybe we don't have the funding that we needed, and we've got, acquisitions on, all of a sudden that we might have to hold off on. So that's unique. But what else do you think, guys? I mean, what beyond that, what else do you think you're doing that's a little bit different?
I think the DSO model overall is a great model. And I think it does get a lot of bad press because some bad actors are, without maybe bad intentions, but just, bad operations or bad outcomes. Consolidation in group practice in dentistry is not inherently bad for where we're going as a profession. It's just, how do you support the offices? That's, you hit the point, is you have to support the offices, and you have, in a lot of the times, when the private equity boom happened, mergers and acquisitions is not the hardest part about getting, running a DSO. That's probably the easiest part, because, when the cash was flowing and doctors were coming on board, mergers and acquisitions is probably one of the easiest arms. But what they really kind of underestimated was the need and level of support that each office needs to be really handheld to actually run the operations of the offices. And so, from the beginning, we made it a kind of a mantra of what we were doing, to have a fully integrated platform. Do the hard things first. Everybody says, "Oh, don't switch your procurement. You're not going to switch your practice management software. You're not going to do that." But you have no visibility, you have no controls, or you have no ability to help those offices if they have staff turnover, if they have some of the challenges on a day-to-day basis. And if you don't have the same practice management software, the same accounting software, it's so hard to use these bridge software, kind of bridge third-party systems to have a visibility to your offices. So I think right from the beginning of integrations, we made the tough decisions to say, in our goal was always 90 to 120 days that these offices are on board and fully operational on our platform, including the practice management software, including procurement, finance, check writing, reconciliations, RCM, all the facets of the office to really fully support the offices. And including marketing too, I forgot to mention there. But like the doctors are coming on board not only to have a potential transition plan, or to have a path for their practice life, but they also, a lot of them need and want the support and not be an individual office anymore. And that is a great thing, and a great model of the DSO world, is having that support, but you've got to deliver on it.
Anybody else want to chime in there? I'd love to, Dave, just from an operational perspective, because of, we talk about, you know, building out the infrastructure. You obviously were pretty critical and kind of looking at that and saying, hey, we need to do this before we grow too big.
I think we've always looked at it, and I think, because of Aaron and I's history of doing the transitions ourselves, and it used to be, kind of acquiring practices of, retiring doctors, and Aaron and I taking over the patient care on a pretty quick basis, and, seeing the evolution of that as you went from like one office to three offices. You had to be somebody different kind of every time you bought three offices, because of scalability, because of centralization. And as we continued to grow those, I think we learned early on that you had to kind of think forward focused, and not be, kind of in the rear. And so you really had to plan out ahead of, what do we need to do if we're going to do X, Y, and Z? If this is our goal for the next 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, what do we need this to look like? And I think that kind of forward thinking's always helped us. I think because we always wanted to run a sustainable business and a long-term solution, and always kind of controlled the interest of it, we had to have good cash flow, good margins, good control of the practices, good systems and SOPs that were tight. Like Aaron said, with the more integrated and consolidated you are, the easier it is to manage and have oversight over everything. You can turn the knobs and levers, and if it's more disjointed, it's almost impossible to do it. And that's what we really, kind of, as we go through the integration process with our new partners, it's really emphasizes kind of the whys of why we're doing it. There are some, initial pain points of just, getting over to all the new software and everything else. But as they see it go through, they definitely realize the great value in the work that we put in, because of the aftermath of how much, more streamlined it is, and how much more we can support them, and all the different systems and processes, from tickets to communication standpoint, that we have with the offices. Because of what we do, it's allowed it to be a lot easier.
one other big difference is that you're doctor owned. You didn't take private equity. So let's talk about that. I'm sure when before Mike came on, you had 11, 12 locations. You were a platform, and I'm sure there were probably investors that were talking to you and interested in partnering private equity. Um, so what was the decision process there to say, you know what, we don't want to go down that path. We want to try and, do this on our own. And what's that journey been like?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, Dave, I was 35, 36. Dave was 40. And we were absolutely approached coming out of COVID. We were absolutely approached by a lot of the name brand groups out there. Had to make some decision points and pivot points to what we wanted to do, and it really came down to kind of our EOS of where we were at and what we wanted to do. And part of that was we didn't want to give up control to what we were doing. We thought there was a better way to do. There was a better hypothesis to do it the way that we wanted to do it. And when we looked at the options of private equity backed groups, we turned it down to the model that we wanted to take a group of practices and a group of partners and grow it the right way without having the influences of private equity. There's great needs and rocket boosters with private equity, and at some point that's going to be probably in our future as we continue scaling and continue pushing forward into 80, 100 practices, 150 practices. But at the time and currently at this time, we didn't want the pressure to build for an exit, or the decisions that are prioritizing, financial decisions versus doctor clinical decisions, and building the platform for partners and for doctors the way that we would do it in a private practice setting. So we've really tried to, have those values and stay with those values so we can get to a scalable portion where those values are hard to change and they're already integrated into the platform as right from the beginning. And so it's really created a culture of doctor forward facing vision, and I think it's been a great path.
Well, I think early on too in my career, I started off working for, as a clinician working for DSOs, and I saw the things I liked, the things I didn't. And I, as we formed our own vision for what we wanted this company to be, I didn't think, at the time we weren't ready yet. We weren't ready to, kind of lose where we were going. We were having too much fun doing this. And I think we had, some clear skies and seas ahead of us that we could, do this the way we wanted to. And, I think that was one of the biggest reasons why Aaron and I chose to continue on the path we were on instead of either taking on a partner or joining another group, was because we kind of really believed in what we were doing. For one, we had a good pipeline ahead of us, and we both felt like we put a lot of work in, and we kind of wanted to see it through on our own backs to see what we could do to build a team and build this out going forward. So, it's been good, and I think the staying true to the doctor owned, doctor operated, and the high touch points of the people that they're dealing with as partners has been really unique and fun.
Yeah,
And I
Mike,
think some of the hard parts there too are, it's keeping to that original EOS. It's keeping that discipline going, right? It's you don't want to over leverage. You don't want to make bad deals, but it also gives you the ability of being more creative by doing things kind of out of the box, by being able to take advantage of different scenarios that you see. And so I think that's where it always comes down to. And as Dave and Aaron have kind of mentioned a couple of times, it's just that sustainable business model is that Motor City runs as a business, and we don't need private equity. We're able to borrow debt and have an amazing lender behind us. But our goal is always to make sure, watch our leverage, make sure that we're running a sustainable business model and keep it that way. And so when we bring partners on, right, our fiduciary responsibility is to them, because those are our investors, right? Our doctors that join, those are the ones that are important to us. And so making sure that we can continue to do, what we set out to do, which is create a sustainable business model of a DSO that supports those doctors and gives them what they're looking for.
Let's let's talk a little bit more. We touched on this earlier, but the S in DSO stands for support, and it means different things, I think, to different organizations. But that's why people join a DSO, right? They're looking for something, whether it could be potentially an exit, but a lot of times it's not. They've gotten as far as they can on their own, and they're either looking for, clinical support or, non-clinical support where it's, the accounting and all the things that they didn't teach you in dental school or didn't want to learn because they wanted to be dentists or and orthodontists. That you can provide. But talk a little bit about what that S means to you, to Motor City.
I think one of the most popular things that we hear from our partners is one, revenue cycle management. The management of all insurance billing and patient AR, and assisting with that. I think that's a huge burden. They're excited to have not help and alleviation from. I think from an HR payroll systems and financial management, helping out with different recruiting things for staff and training. One of the other things that they really like about our group, because we're so heavily doctor focused, is doing like best practices stuff and talking about kind of what everybody else is doing from a clinical standpoint, or what they found for staff engagement and that kind of stuff within their teams. So from our standpoint, we look at it as centralization of kind of all different systems, and we have a lot of automated systems that really help them out from all different aspects. But I think it's some of the other things that are kind of the unsung heroes that really help our platform from a doctor standpoint and from the team standpoint.
Love to touch on a little bit more. You talked about automation, and I think it's probably a good point to talk about that. You get inundated. We're all inundated with AI and technology, and I think probably a lot of people just want to shut down because there's just so much coming at you at once, and it's changing so quickly. Are there any particular automation solutions that you put in place, or AI or technology that's just been transformative for the organization?
I think in every department, I think we've found some really good additions to our platform. One to call out that's it's kind of overlooked, but our procurement platform using Method is fantastic, and having offices be able to check to make sure they receive their order all the way down, that it matches up the invoice, and then it automatically puts it into our accounting software. And so I think that's kind of every level that we look at is what can we do to develop systems that can support the offices. One, so we're not kind of reaching over and making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But two is, does this create simplicity? Does it help them? And so that's one. We have a data warehouse that we're storing data and able to deliver them reports as quickly as possible so they can see in real time what they're working on and what they're doing. And so I think as we've continued to grow, it's making sure that we keep the platform simple. You don't want to overcomplicate anything. And then the other part of that is just making sure that what they have is exactly what they need to support themselves. I agree. I think AI is kind of the big topic of, well, what is everybody doing? I think in our data warehouse, in the future, we'll have more AI developed and AI go from there. But right now, it's a lot of it is just making sure their platform can help grow and help the doctors get what they need as quickly as possible. And then any solutions we can find just to make sure everything stays as simple as possible.
I think one of those key things in automation that that partners have really liked, that Mike touched on, was that data warehouse and the dashboards that are real time. We close the books within 15 days of the month, and these dashboards and are at their fingertips at their own desktop. They can see the metrics of the practice and high level KPIs from HR KPIs to actual practice KPIs. But pulling that out and doing that in automated fashion so doctors can see it real time, where their production is, where their overhead is, and then we can see it real time to help those problems, instead of waiting for P&Ls to come out in 3 months. You're already behind the 8 ball. But because we have it automated in our data warehouse and on these dashboards, it's really allowed for great visibility to the practices from not only kind of a support level, but also from the practice level, so doctors know where they're at all times. They still could run reports out of Dolphin, and they still could do that, but doctors get running on a routine that sometimes they don't think about that. But when the dashboards are there, it's right there in a kind of a graphical where you start, where your production, where your overhead is, where your overtime, where your HR, yada yada, for that the metrics that we want to look at. So I think it's been an important change, in docs are really loving the visibility of their offices. They've never had the capabilities of doing it before.
Talk a little bit about your model. You're both orthodontists. You started out, and is it? Do you do any de novo, or is it pretty much all acquisition?
So we have done some added services to locations. We're predominantly orthodontic offices. We've in the last couple years we've increased our pediatric platform arm, and we've done some added services in our ortho offices by adding pediatrics. We've added orthodontic offices in the pediatric offices, but not a strict de novo. Our growth plan and growth strategy is an acquisitions and partner model. I think that from an orthodontic de novo, you have to have the patient support for it in order to kind of start those practices up. And we've always found it's always been it's a long road on a ortho de novo, but from a pediatric startup, we've seen we're definitely a little bit bullish on a pediatric de novo start model when the opportunities are there in communities that are underserved in the pediatric world. So definitely have seen some early success. We launched our first pediatric added service in an orthodontic office in August of last year, and seen ahead of our projections and growth of that office. So definitely on pace for a great first year from that de novo. But from a structure standpoint, no, we're a partner based model.
And you're Midwest based. It's interesting. You've got there are a lot of groups that seem to have come out of the Detroit area, and you have Great Expressions, of course, which was one of the biggies early on that came out of that area. A lot of smaller groups there as well. So why the focus on the Midwest? And can you talk a little bit about, like, at this point, when you started Motor City Dental Partners, you had 12 practices. How many locations do you have now? You said almost most of them are orthodontic. You've got some pedo rolled in there, but kind of paint the picture of what you look like now. Are you outside of Michigan at all?
Yeah. So, historically we're Midwest people, and Midwest values, Midwest people. And, when we started our growth and scaling, everybody was, one of the critiques to us in the early phases is, why aren't you multi-state? Why aren't you national? Why aren't you looking at offices in Florida and Texas? We always went back to the ethos of where we started is we have to support the offices. So we weren't able, and you're starting to see some of those pitfalls now when you're too spread out across the country, and you don't have that operational support and the structure built to really support the offices. It's not an M&A strategy to just buy practices everywhere and then not be able to run them. So Dave and I, grew up in Michigan, grew up in Detroit area. We grew up in a little town called Romeo, Michigan. Kid Rock's from Romeo is kind of our claim to fame in Romeo. But really Midwest values, and we wanted to stay in the Midwest. And the partners that we have the same values and the same love for their towns and the same loves for their states. And where a lot of people are, wanting to be in that national, our philosophy is always to be geographically penetrated in the Midwest. Currently, we have 58 offices, Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio, with a strong growth strategy and growth pipeline in Indiana and Ohio right now. We're seeing our brand, our philosophy, our vision really resonating in these Midwest states, because there's not a product like us in the Midwest that is privately held, non-PE backed, with the integration philosophy that we have and the growth strategy that we have. and has really been a resident. You have the big box stores, you have the big box commodities that partners and our doctors feel comfortable with, and you've got some good products out there. And then we're kind of the alternative to that, where we're we're a little bit smaller, we're a little bit more white gloved approach. Everybody says they're doctor owned. We're actually doctor owned. There's no outside investors on our cap table. We are our investors are our partners, are our doctors, and it's really resonating to fuel our growth in the Midwest.
I'm kind of curious. You talked a little bit about your integration philosophy, is what you said. So as you acquire these practices, what changes or what things do what? So who do you focus on? So who's that ideal acquisition? And then once you acquire them and you start to integrate them, what does that process look like? What remains the same and what changes? Dave, maybe that's yours.
Yeah, if Aaron wants to take the first part, I'll probably have the ideal kind of acquisition, then I'll take the second part if you want to.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the partner first vision, and the partner who it's not about the black and white of a P&L and how the practice looks, in the practice profile. I know that, there's how many chairs do you have? What's your gross revenue? What's your EBITDA? You having those minimum parameters. For us, it's a partner driven approach. Do you have the same philosophies and vision that we do? Are you going to be a good partner with us? We've definitely have, found partners that, have a different vision and have a different, outlook of what they're looking for in their next, 5 to 10 years that just doesn't fit our model. And so we don't join up with all offices, and we have a selection, and that's kind of where my role really is taken up a lot of times. Is really trying to identify the partners that are going to fit our partnership, that are going to be great partners moving forward and great ambassadors of what we're doing, so that we're not being distracted by the potential noise of tougher partners and philosophies that just don't match.
And then once partners come on, we have a whole white glove approach to how we transition from kind of that mergers and acquisitions phase of the business to how we're going to bring you on to our team. And it really starts pre-close in terms of information gathering and that, so our team can really be proactive in that. And then there's a kind of a 5-stage approach that we use, and it starts really with HR and onboarding of everybody, and then it works in through the procurement and finance systems, and it's all laid out into different phases for them, with information Q&As, with a whole different rollout, and in bleeding each team or department in at the right appropriate time, and eventually after 90 days with as minimal stress as possible on the teams and the doctors, they're on our platform and rolling forward with all of our systems.
And I think a big change to that too is letting them preserve their culture too. A lot of DSOs like, well, what's your culture? At the end of the day, our culture is what makes our practices great, is them being able to keep the culture that they have. Our goal isn't to go in and make this a Motor City Dental Partners office. Our goal is to go in and make sure we have a good support system where we can support them, but we don't want to change their culture. That office has thrived and that office is successful because of the culture that doctor has built. And so we go in to help them enhance and take the support and make sure we can help them kind of continue to grow. But we don't want to go in and, okay, well, our culture is this, you have to do it this way. It's more of like, let's keep you doing what made you successful and support you in growth and help you give the support you need. But let's not change your culture. You've built something amazing. Let's continue to support something you've built, so we can continue to thrive on that and grow on that piece of it.
Great. This is a great conversation. I've learned a lot today. As we start to wrap things up here, I always have a crystal ball question towards the end. So we can predict out, in 5 years, what Motor City Dental Partners, what you'd like it to look like. What is that 5 years? What's that, 2031? Wow. What does 2031 look like for Motor City Dental Partners? Aaron, you want to start with that?
Yeah, great question. And we right from the beginning, we we didn't build Motor City to be an exit strategy for us. We built it to be a sustainable company, and back in those grassroots days, is we wanted to be a player in the industry. And in 5 years, we really have our goals to be sitting side saddle with a lot of the name brand OSOs that are out there, DSOs that are out there, as an industry leader, but an industry leader with our doctor-led culture, an industry leader with our innovation and our systems and the way we approach group practice. That is always been our beginning chapters of our book, and our continuation of our book is really building upon what we've already built from the grassroots campaign of going from private practice model to group practice model, and really being able to sit side saddle with the big groups out there that are out there today, and have that innovative perspective of group practice, because it's going to continue to evolve. And if we don't evolve with it and group practice with it, the group dentistry is gonna struggle. But we always have that vision of how to keep making it better, how to keep our partners happy, how to keep growing. And we don't want it to be just an exit strategy for older doctors. We want younger doctors to come onto the platform, because this is I think the future of dentistry, and where dentistry is going. That's where we really want to continue to hone our systems and our innovation to continue over the course of years.
Well, I think a lot of it is continue to penetrate the Ohio and Indiana market. I mean, in 5 years, we went from 11 practices to almost 60 now. You look at another 5 years, and as we continue to build the system, you're probably doubling, the growth that we can do in another 5 years. And so it's keeping the EOS the same, keeping that same model, and making sure that we're following the guidelines that Motor City, that Dave and Aaron set out in the beginning of. Let's just continue to grow a sustainable business model. Let's keep it localized. Let's keep it in the Midwest. So I see Ohio, Indiana. If you put our dots in Michigan, we're kind of everywhere. And so as we do the same in Ohio and Indiana, and kind of keeping that Midwest idea of where our roots are, Midwest people for Midwest businesses, is what we've grown into, and what we're going to continue to grow to.
And what's the best way if somebody's interested in finding out more about becoming a partner? Just want to learn more about the organization. What's the best way to connect with you guys? Dave?
Absolutely.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're, initially, you can find us on LinkedIn. We're really leaning into, our LinkedIn presence as we continue expanding outside the Michigan borders. We're redeveloping our website to really create the vision of what we're looking for, and to be able to, really explain it a little bit more graphically to prospective partners. We're always available for a conversation, whether it's right for you now, or you're just learning for wanting to learn some information about just group dentistry. We love having open conversations with potential future partners or orthodontists about where the industry's going, sharing our, really tribal knowledge of what we've learned over the course of 5-6 years with people that are docs that want to explore. And so we really love those initial conversations. Craig, heads up our M&A partner development strategy, and Craig Williamson, and he's been a great advocate for initial conversations just to learn. And there's no strings attached. There's no anything. It's just, let's have a conversation. Let's see if it is right for you. Because a lot of partners have come on going, I'm a couple years out. Then we start having a conversation, and yeah, this is right for me. Actually, this is a good time for me. So love having those initial conversations whenever anybody's open to it. And there's plenty of ways to get a hold of us. We're readily available. So we really look forward to, having those initial conversations with future doctors that come onto our platform.
Excellent.
And I think it's also for people not, for other DSOs, anybody else. And that's why, go to the panel that I did is sharing knowledge in DSOs of anything that we can do to continue strengthen the DSO industry, the better it is for all of us. When one DSO wins, we all win. And so anything that we can always do to anybody who's reached out or interested, we're always able to help out. It was hard. I'd say it was hard in the beginning for us because there wasn't a playbook. I think part of what we're doing now and why I do the panels is like, I can help you tell you how we did it. It's, they all say, as one DSO, one DSO. But I think the sharing of ideas, it isn't a secret. Any DSO that does well is successful for all of us. And so there shouldn't be a secret playbook. We're in Michigan, Indiana, Ohio. Our values still resonate in Arizona. So if somebody's interested in Arizona, it's like, well, how'd you do this? Or what are you using? Always happy to share. I think it's what makes DSO successful and how the industry continues to be successful is kind of we all work together to continue to grow the industry.
Excellent. Dave, I'll give you the final thoughts here since you're the last one.
Yeah, even to touch on what Mike was saying, I mean, we've met a lot of great people. When Aaron and I first, kind of got into the DSO world and, MCDP came about and we thought it was going to be this huge world out there and nobody really knew each other. And it's really a lot more closer knit than you think, right? And so you start to see the same faces and we've met a lot of friends across the industry. And like Mike says, I found it to be very collegial. And everybody's trying to, exchange best practices with each other and, trying to help each other out and rooting each other on. I mean, we're all for everybody's success. And I think that's been one of the real, kind of surprises as we've gone through this process is what a cool, kind of small market it is in this world. And everybody's been, great to meet. And it's been a great, life experience along the way.
Excellent. Yeah, great way to finish things off. Their website address, Motor City Dental Partners website address is MC, like Motor City, mcdentalpartners.com. You can find them there, and we'll drop your LinkedIn handles in the show notes. So if people want to reach out, and was it Craig Williamson? Is that who handles business development for you all? So we'll drop Craig's info in there as well, so you can reach out to the appropriate people. But thanks, guys. Great conversation, Aaron, Mike, Dave. Really appreciate you taking the time out. And thanks everybody for watching the podcast. Until next time, this is the Group Dentistry Now Show.